All right, hey everybody. We're back with another edition of KC Music Talk. We are here today with a public school orchestra teacher, Cecily Mahan. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you today?
Good. Yeah. Thanks for coming.
No problem.
Yeah. So you and I have met a couple times in this big circle of teachers here in town, and tell us a little bit about, before we get into the actual teaching stuff, tell us a little bit about how you got started into music.
Well, Rob, I was 3 years old, and my brother played clarinet, and I had his book. My mom said, "Well, honey, you can't have that until you know how to read that music." And I looked at her and said, "Well, gosh, that's an A and that's a G." And she's like, "Okay." So they put me in piano lessons at 5 and violin at 6, and I never looked back.
Wow.
Lots of recitals, private lessons in both piano and violin all the way through high school. So that's how I got into it.
Wow, so you were like schooling people at 3 years old, right?
I was like, I can't teach much else, but I know a little bit about music.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So you get, and this has been a theme with like literally everybody I've had on the show, is that they all had music in the home. Every single one of them that are gigging now or teaching now. I mean, like there is something to that.
My mom would work with me every night, like for 2 hours. I would just play my violin, and she'd play piano with me. And I look back, and I think about the sacrifice that was of her giving her time every single night to help me out. And, I'm forever grateful to my mom for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
She really cared enough about it to nurture it. And we didn't have much money. I had a loaned violin from the elementary school. It was a piece of crap. And, I worked really hard at it. Mom and Dad sacrificed the money they had to get me lessons, and it meant a lot to them. And so it meant a lot to me, too.
That's great, yeah. I know when I started Suzuki really young, I mean, they were intense about that. They're like, no, you're parent, you're going to have your own instrument, you're going to be in the lessons, you're going to be assistant teacher at home, you're going to play those CDs over and over, you're going to, and she did a fabulous job, my mom, of, for the whole first year with their violin, and we're, a literal 3-part team here, not 2-part, 3-part, and I was going to talk about this later, but what has been your kind of opinion about parental involvement in regards to your teaching?
Well, you either are in an area where parents have the time to be involved, or you're in an area where the parents are working 2 and 3 jobs and just trying to put a meal on the table. But one thing I've noticed throughout the whole kit and caboodle is that every parent really does care. And it's not necessarily where they don't have the time to give their kid to sit down and do homework. I think they all start off with really good intentions.
Yeah.
And they want to be a good parent. But a lot of times life gets in the way, and they've got to make sure that, Johnny gets his braces and all this other stuff. So overall, my parent involvement's really good. And if I call them and say, hey, I have a problem, I need your help with this or whatever, most of the parents will say, what can I do?
Yeah.
Yeah. Even the ones that are super busy.
Yeah, definitely. And that is a good thing to always remember, because I being a private teacher, I see my parents like all the time,
Right.
Every single lesson I see them, and you're in a little bit different situation where you see them at the teacher conference and then maybe a concert, and I think that's a good piece of advice for myself to always remember, is that it always feels like, they're not doing enough or whatever, but, I'm not seeing the whole story.
Right.
Of their lives, of the random races, like you said. Yeah, that's a good point.
Or they blow a tire and they need a new tire. I mean, any of that can set a family completely destitute.
Yeah, sure.
I've been there.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's just for myself, it's easy to be so intense with whatever this is, doing the lesson and trying to trying to realize that this isn't 9/11 right now. I mean, this is a music lesson, and that this tire is more important than this lesson right now. So just kind of calm down.
Right.
You always have next week. Yeah, and that's a good piece of advice for me because I get really intense with it and wanted the lessons and the music to be not first priority, but high priority in their life, and sometimes it just can't be, right?
Right.
Yeah. So with your, and you're at Olathe North, is that right? Yeah, so Olathe North.
Go Eagles.
Yeah. So how long have you been there?
This will be my 7th year at North, and I was in Shawnee Mission for 22 years.
Yeah, wow.
Elementary and middle.
Yeah, cool. And now you're at high school, huh?
Now I'm at the high school.
Yeah. How has that been, doing the younger, older?
At first it was a challenge because I went from teaching this is an F sharp to listening to the Elgar cello concerto in the practice room next to me. And I called my friend. It's like, how do I teach this? This is, I don't know how to play cello this well. How do I teach this kid? And her advice was just give him opportunities. It's like, okay, I will give him opportunities. And that's what, I went on from there. It was great advice.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I have a lot of trouble with the younger kids, especially the under 4th grade, which you guys wouldn't have a ton, with the orchestra starting in 4th or 5th or whatever. But I have a lot of trouble with the younger kids. That 4th grade and up, like, I feel very comfortable. I can joke with them. I can,
but anything before that, their thinking is so concrete that I don't relate to them as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes a special person to be able to do that.
Yeah, she always talks to me about that because she taught special ed 24 years, my mom, and she's like, yeah, it's the concrete abstract stuff. That's funny you said that because she's like, man, you say sit down to an autistic kid, for example, well, where? Sit down over there, sit down over here, sit down in the chair.
Down, like, right there.
Yeah,
on the floor.
And so that, she was talking to me about little things like that we all take for granted. Well, that's actually an abstract concept, and so, was there anything that was easier about the younger or easier about the older, or?
Well, I loved 4th grade because, when Beanie Babies was a craze, God, I made the teachers so mad. I would have them, if they practiced for a week, they could bring their Beanie Baby and put it up on the piano and play to their Beanie Baby in class. And of course, the teachers are like, messing up our classes. You're making a distraction. Blah, 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 blah. It's like, but it was a great concept. They would have done anything to bring their Beanie Baby to class.
Right.
And it wasn't candy, I wasn't giving them cavities. And it's like, what can I do? You got to have that teacher support. And I always felt like in the elementary school where I was in Shawnee Mission, it was hard to get because we were pull-out classes. And I wish that administration had been, a little bit more supportive of that. But there's going to be teachers in that situation, and the more you can get along with those classroom teachers, the better. Bring them some coffee in the morning. Not to brown nose them, but just let them know that you're
on
their
the same
friend.
team.
We're on the same team.
Yeah.
So, if they could do that, that would help a lot.
Oh, yeah.
But pulling kids out, that's always a tough thing. But we need to do that in order to have our programs.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and we haven't talked about administrators at all or the other teachers dealing with that on the show yet. So, that's an interesting topic because that happens a lot, right? Like every week you've got to deal with something of... another one that I thought of is we had a really good relationship because I was with Mary Lou, right, at Shawnee Mission and she had a great relationship with Steve Adams, with the band teacher. So taking his kids out for the full orchestra, the band, and just little things like that about being really nice to them and trying to work with them is...
And not necessarily just, brown nose them, like I said, but just work with them.
Yeah.
Let them know that you understand. Like, my band director and I, he's got camp going on this week, and I brought him something to drink, and he comes in and goes, hey, can my kids come in here? I was like, I don't know, I was writing music. Oh, no problem, we'll find somewhere else. That kind of camaraderie is, like, so important.
Right. And you guys know exactly what they're doing too. I mean, you're all in the same. You guys, especially with the band directors. I mean, you're all literally in the same boat. I mean, you do the exact same thing basically. So I mean, there's no reason. There's no reason for other people to be pissy, right? I mean,
Right.
like we're all doing this together. Like, calm down. It's like.
And I know there'll be teachers out there that will be in the situation where they have to schedule their own classes in the elementary school and talk with the principals, and that's always such a hard issue because the principals don't want them to be taken out of math or science or whatever.
Right.
And so they're going to have to be able to work with that principal and come up with a really good solution.
Right.
If you have a really good administrator, then you're going to be all right. But if you have an administrator that is more core heavy and not specials,
liberal arts kind of stuff.
Heavy. You're going to have issues, and so you're going to have to be able to work with that administrator.
Right.
It can be really tough.
Oh, sure. One of my other friends worked in KCK doing public school orchestra, and she talked about her supervisor of all the string teachers and dealing with her as well with scheduling and just trying to work with them, and then them her administrator working with the principal as well, and you have this like 7-part team sort of going on, and it's just dealing with all the personalities and egos can be kind of crazy sometimes.
It is, yeah. If you can get into a school district where I am now, the head administrator for fine arts does all of the scheduling, and so you're not put in that position where you have to figure out schedules, and you just have a camaraderie with the teachers.
Right.
And that's really cool.
Oh yeah. So you mentioned the Beanie Baby thing, and I thought that was really fascinating, and that's one thing I wanted to talk about with you is so that's been a struggle of mine is to think. So my mom's been trying to tell me, she's like, man, if you put these little, like I saw this on a YouTube, if you put these little monkeys on the stand and then you do the thing and you take away the monkey and then you do the kids go nuts. Like they love that stupid crap, and like that seems so dumb to me. The Beanie Baby thing seems silly to me, but to them it's not, right?
They still remember that.
Yeah.
I have students in their 30s or 20s or whatever. It's like, you remember when we could bring our Beanie Babies?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Do you remember the F sharps I was teaching you? Well, kind of,
No.
And so
they remember that stuff.
Yeah, so that's like, so my big thing has been like motivation, or my big struggle in the last, since I've started teaching is try to figure out how to get them to motivate the students a little better. And with the little kids, I finally come around to at least emotionally accepting that kind of stuff and realize I'm going to have to do these feels like little stupid games with them and stupid stuff. But to this first grader, I mean, they go crazy over that. And like, did you ever struggle with like having to accept that, or was that kind of just always a thing that you kind of understood that you're going to have to do stuff like that?
I've always had a really good rapport with other people. And the kids, the first thing that you have to do, and this doesn't matter what age package they're in, you have to be able to talk with them. So just look at them in the eye and say, hey, how was your baseball game yesterday? Did you guys win? Or, did you get to steal home? And if you talk to them about their everyday life, they're going to connect with you. Let them know that you care about them. It's like, man, I'm sorry, you got this cut on your finger. Gosh, that must really hurt, and not be afraid just to kind of personalize with them a little bit. And then you can start from there.
Yeah, and like, I noticed that sort of, I'm probably always way too much in my own head, but I was kind of thinking out, like with improv, for example, there's always this wall that of being scared, and I was kind of feeling the same thing that you were just talking about, where I realized that if I get them through that wall, it's over. Then they're with me and I can do anything they want, but I've got to get through the wall first, and maybe that's something
they have to feel safe.
Yeah, and
students, people, they have to feel safe to be themselves and to make a mistake.
Yeah. And that's why they won't go through the walls, because they're worried about making a mistake. But that's, so you think that's like that's sort of number one,
it is
right?
number one.
Yeah. Wow.
I just came last weekend from a funeral of a former student. She was 22 years old.
Wow.
I think she was afraid to make mistakes. And one thing that I like to teach and have in my teaching is that it's okay. The world will not end if it doesn't come out right.
Yeah.
And the other thing is to give perimeters. So like if I'm doing jazz improvisation, then I will give them like, okay, you have 3 notes that you can play.
Mm-hmm.
You can play them in any order or any rhythm that you want to.
Right.
You are forbidden to play 4 notes. You can only do 3.
Right.
And that gives them a safety net.
Yeah.
And so like if they fall off of the safety net, it's like, yay, you did a great job.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. It's no
right.
big deal. But that's the first thing, is that kids need to learn how to persevere, and they need to know how to be safe.
Mm.
And if they can do that, then they'll do anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, then they'll sort of, with that idea, I try to do that kind of thing where I give them parameters too when I'm doing improv, and it's a really good idea. The basketball analogy is your pivot foot. Like you have this solid ground of, I know what I'm supposed to be doing. I have these 3 notes, but then then you're doing the improv risk-taking kind of thing, but you have this solid foundation of something, instead of just throwing them off the cliff,
Okay, here's a G7, improv something.
And they're just like, what do I do?
What do I do?
That's when the wall comes up,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so with this idea of like motivation is probably for myself, just kind of self-analyzing. I'm really, really into this stuff. I'm playing since 3 years old. All I do all day is music. I mean, I listen to it, I write music, I play bands, I go teach, I get, and so I'm really into this. And so when I get into the lessons, the thing that drives me nuts is when when they don't care. I can listen to myself, I can listen to Screeching E's all day if they're like trying and stuff. And so when I'm thinking about the motivation, I was trying to, my mom and I were trying to come up with like a list of things that of how you would motivate a kid. And some of the stuff that we came up with was one of the games. That's, another one is like an external force, like a concert or something, to have like, not you're just practicing in the wind for some reason.
Right.
You have this like actual tangible goal that you're sitting.
If they're going to perform for somebody, they're likely to practice.
Yeah. Or even the week before, then they go, oh crap, I have a concert, and then they finally get in the practice room.
The more they perform, the more they practice.
Yes. Yeah. And that's one. Definitely like parental motivation of you're in the lesson, and you finally, you're at that moment where the parent's over here and you're triangulating on them. Hey man, he did a really good job today. And they're like, oh, the students all like glad that you're like caring about them to the parent. And there's kind of the parent thing. Other kids, can be, I want to be first chair, or that, that little mild competition thing. Music choices, playing really crappy songs can be annoying sometimes.
Or staying on the same song for too long.
Yes, yeah.
If you don't get the concept, just move on.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then the last one that I've found out that I know all of us adults understand is that what makes us keep going is when we feel like that we're actually doing something good, that internal stuff happening is
validation.
The validation even of yourself, that that, like, I know I can feel this when they get to like Bach double kind of and they're like, man, I can play like this 2-page song and I'm like ripping through. I mean, I'm doing something now. And they can feel it. So I'm listing out all of these things, and I'm going through and I'm like, I'm setting up recitals. I'm trying to take them through like Suzuki books and stuff that's not horrible literature. I'm talking to the parents, and I list out all these things, and I'm like, why is it still so hard? Why am I still struggling with some students? And with myself, I tend to either get them for like a month or like 3 years. You know, it's I don't know if my personality is kind of with me or against. You know, I don't know if I come off that way, but so here's the question now, and this is more of even like a philosophical question, is that are there some kids that you've just got to kind of move on?
Yes, and the answer is that you just do your very best. You know, you try to connect. Connection is a huge deal. Mm. And then also with little kids, it's extrinsic motivation, and then with the older kids, it's intrinsic motivation. Yeah. If I can't pronounce it.
No, yeah.
But it's like you have to get them from wanting to do it for an outside reason to wanting to do it for an inside reason. Mm-hmm. And that's when you try to make the connection between music and who they are. So if you can make it meaningful for them, you know, that helps a lot.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I think maybe you're hitting on it, because I think I'm maybe trying to treat the third graders like the 11th grader, where I'm coming all internal, and I'm like, man, you know, if you practice a lot, and that's the problem with the fun and the work too, because I know the real truth of that is that when you start doing the work, you can now play the Bach double, and you can play all these more fun songs that are way better than Twinkle, you know, and well, that's the motivation. I mean, that needs to end up being the motivation, but I'm treating them with the internal. I'm expecting them to do the internal, but they need the external maybe.
The other thing is with the little kids, like the really little kids, you only want to work on one thing.
Right, yeah.
You don't want to cloud their minds with, oh, well, yeah, this hand wasn't right. Okay, your bow hand's not right. Okay, you didn't play that in tune. Pick one.
Yeah.
And then when they're successful, oh my gosh, you did it. Mm-hmm. You played that perfectly. And then once you work on that for a while, you can move on to the other stuff. But you don't want...
one thing at a time, yeah.
They are incapable of multitasking well. Mm-hmm. They have to have one goal, and they need to achieve that goal, and then you can move on.
Right.
And it may be as easy as putting their thumb in the right spot.
Right.
Or holding their bow a certain way, or playing the F sharp totally on the tape.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's like, you know.
Don't do the other thumb while you're doing that thumb. It's one thing, yeah.
One thing at a time.
Right, yeah, that's a good point. And that was definitely a thing when I was a young teacher, because that's the problem, is that so much Suzuki and ear playing and college and all this stuff, I mean, they play and I hear the 6 things like in 4 seconds.
Absolutely.
You know, you hear it all.
It's like, I need to correct this and this and this and this.
Yeah, and I could list it out to them right now too. I mean, just blast on them. Okay, the F sharp here, the da-da-da, and that was a tough thing when I wanted to give them 2. You know, I would do a little better of giving 2, but I've tried to do better at that recently, but that's a really good.
And if they make a mistake, you know what? We'll get that at another time. Let's work on this.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. And like, so have you ever had a student that you tried to reach, and then you finally were able to with this kind of motivation stuff, or a student that you tried really hard and never could, or do you have any?
We all have students that we've tried really hard and never could.
Yeah.
And you have to remember it's not your fault. You know, they weren't either willing to learn, or they had a situation at home where they were incapable of focusing on what you wanted them to focus on, or they just didn't want to do it. If you know, you and me, if we don't want to go do something, we don't do it. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, maybe mom and dad are making them take lessons or be in orchestra, and they really would rather be on their phone to their friend. There's not much you can do to motivate them besides make that connection with them. Mm-hmm. That's the only way that you can get them to be motivated at all.
Right.
If they want to do it for your relationship, like you have a relationship with a kid, you get along with them really well, you know, you may have like a really tough kid, you say, hey, come on, buddy, you know, let's try this a little bit more.
Right.
You just go up to him and say, hey, is it possible for you to be able to do this today? Do I need to give you a safe place to go? You know, that kind of thing. But you can't expect to reach everybody. You can certainly try, And then you have the kids that, you know, they just kind of tread water for a while. Then all of a sudden they get a spark. And it's like something made them excited about playing. Could have been you. It could have been a video. It could have been anything. But if you approach it with a positive instead of a negative, you're more likely to get them. One thing a teacher said to me once is that you can get more flies with honey than vinegar.
Right.
And she's right.
Right.
You know, I take what all these teachers have told me. It's like, you know what? Yeah, that's cool. And I'm not stubborn enough to think that my way is the best way. But I've had a lot of achievement.
Yeah. The honey, and I've thought about that a lot too, of this, if you have like a spectrum of the make 'em and the motivation, you know, and where on that do you want to be, and you know, I've been philosophically rolling that through my head a lot too.
And the older they are, the more they can take the vinegar.
Right, yeah.
But really young kids, you don't want to.
It's hard to do. Yeah.
You don't want to say anything negative. Everything's positive. And then, like, as they get older, middle school kids, they tend to internalize everything. And if you get onto them about their behavior, they think you don't like them. They cannot differentiate between, you know, I'm behaving badly and she doesn't like me. It goes hand in hand. So for everything that you say negative to a middle schooler, you have to say 10 things that are positive.
Yeah, the 7 to 1, 10 to 1 thing. Yeah, I've heard of that too, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. And this is one that I hear out at my shows a lot, is that I'll get up there. I'm going to turn on this light. Hold on. It's going to get dark. So at my shows, this happens every other show probably. Somebody comes up, oh, I love the violin. In 4th grade, and I can just finish the sentence, and then I quit. You know, and so that's where I'm always coming back to, again, I'm thinking really broad. I know, and well, you know what they're always going to say is, I wish my mom and dad would have kept me playing. I'm like, you were a bastard. Like, you were yelling at me to quit, and now later in life, now you're mad that you quit, you know, and so that's, you know, again, this is maybe a more of a political kind of topic where, you know, this idea spans into everything, is that how hard as a parent do you push, you know, these are big questions I'm asking, you know, but like that's kind of the thing of where I'm at, is that how much motivation do you need, and then how much do you go, every kid needs to learn how to sweep. I don't really care if you like this or not. You need to know how to sweep a floor, et cetera, with life, you know.
That's like, when you know, devise a schedule. You stay on your schedule every day, no matter what. I tell my kids, I say, you know, just go home. If you like to watch SpongeBob after school, take 15 minutes, one SpongeBob episode, and practice instead of watching SpongeBob. But if parents, like, I always found it helpful, and the high school kids particularly, like their junior year, oh my god, junior is horrible.
Junioritis.
Oh my god, junior year is so bad. And to get them through there, if you make an actual schedule, so it doesn't seem so overwhelming. And so, like, you know, on Monday I do this and this and this, and I get home from school, I practice for 20 minutes. That's it, just 20 minutes. And then I go and do this and this and this. If you can make a schedule every day and adhere to that and make sure that you don't deviate from it, you're likely to be more successful.
Sure.
It's the parents that have a different schedule every day, and there's chaos in the home because of that, that the kids win when it comes to not wanting to practice. Oh, I don't want to practice. And pretty soon it's time for something else, or they have to go to bed or whatever, and they get away with it.
Yeah.
So if you can just adhere to a really good schedule and just have natural consequences, you know, if you don't get la-da-da-da-da done today, then, you know, we won't go out for ice cream on Friday, you know. So just have those natural consequences and not be, like, horrible about it, saying, maybe you didn't do this, and then just say, oh, you know what, you didn't get that done, so no ice cream this week, you know.
Right.
So
yeah, and that's interesting, the tone that you're taking with any kid. That I've noticed that too. I won't mention his name, but a friend of mine, that I always hear him doing stuff like, they taught us at WSU to give commands, that's kind of what you're doing is you're giving a command, but there's not an extra sarcasm BS with it.
No.
I'm so glad that you didn't go get your backpack like I asked you to. Now you're just
right.
What you could say is go get your backpack. We're about ready to leave.
Right.
And that doesn't have any tone with it. That's just a command, and then you don't have this extra "you're a piece of crap" with it.
Right.
And
that anything with a negative connotation with practice is going to make them feel and dread it. So if you can have any kind of a positive connotation with it, or if they don't like for you to listen to them, let them go practice in their room. You can still hear them.
Yeah,
they don't know that, but go let them do that so they feel more private about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think some kids don't want to practice because they don't want brother or sister to make fun of them.
Right.
My brother, I'd be practicing piano and his room was on top, and he would like bang on the ceiling, shut the effing noise, and now he went to our KMEA performance, and he wrote me this great big text because I cannot tell you how proud I am of you,
and he was a hellion to you as a kid.
Oh, he was horrible.
What a turd.
He was terrible. But I think time will help that. So.
Yeah. You mentioned a minute ago that this is kind of almost a therapy thing too, where you can talk to somebody for a long time and then you don't know when that thing is going to click. Like you were talking about the spark or whatever. See, this is probably where I always get into my own head too much, but like. See, I want to know when that spark happens. I want to make that spark.
You may not see it.
You know what I mean? Like that's just emotionally what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to figure out how to initiate that spark.
There's a teacher in KCK. I had her in middle school, and she went on, and she became a strings teacher. And she came up to me and she goes, the reason why I'm a strings teacher? And I said, no. She goes, because of you. Back in 8th grade when you would write out all those fun songs for us to play, she goes, that's what got me hooked.
Wow.
Did I know it at the time?
Wow.
No.
Wow. Yeah.
So you never know what. It just be kind all the time. And then one of these days, one of these kids are going to surprise you and say something like that.
Yeah. I had one kid that came out to me. And he had quit. I'd only done a couple of lessons with him, a couple months, and he came up to me and he was like, "Man, I took from you, and and you were saying like the notes that go up are like higher." I was like, "Whoa," I'm like, "Dude, I'm like, well, I'm glad." I'm like, no, I'm just meaning like, I'm like. I'm like, well, I'm glad that I helped you with that, but you're like a 7th grader and you didn't know that, that's what I was, I'm like,
they
well, I'm
don't
glad.
Get it sometimes.
They just, and I know I said this the other day, but there's Ron White has this joke about going through the tire guy and he missed lug nut day, that's the same kind of thing, oh, so you missed like the notes go up day, I guess you weren't listening, but yeah, so I don't know, that's some stuff that, So with the idea of motivation, that leads me to my next question about, so tell us a little bit about your jazz group you got going on.
All right. One of my biggest things as a strings teacher that I want to employ throughout my life is to have an eclectic kind of curriculum. I've been in too many situations where I'm sitting next to a person in a symphony and they're given a chart that's either rock or jazz, and they play it so square, and they have no idea how to apply a bassy jazz style, or they just have no idea how to do the bowing or articulation, and so I thought, one thing I can do is just start doing these extra groups that have like different playing styles. And whoever wants to do them will gravitate to those styles, and I'm providing an excellent opportunity. So we have our normal classes during the day, and then I have a jazz ensemble that meets twice a week before school.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So it's not actually part of the school day curriculum, but it also gives those kids an extra place to go and play.
Yeah.
So in our jazz group, we do everything from, we started off with a combo style, because, I only had like 8 or 10 kids. Mm-hmm. And so I really couldn't do big band stuff or things that were more full. And then this last year we had 35 kids.
Wow.
That would come twice a week.
Wow.
7 o'clock in the morning. Before school. And these are kids that are taking AP classes and College Now classes, and they're tired. But they come anyway. And the reason why is because we're playing stuff that is with, we have a kick-ass rhythm section, which I'm very grateful for. Yeah. And then, we're just playing tunes that they can really get into and enjoy. Mm-hmm. And then also we have the improvisation where they can learn how, I teach them basic music theory, and then I'll show them what a G7 Mixolydian scale looks like, and we talk about that, and then we'll go through and play just open G when it's a G7 and play open D when it's a D7.
Baselines, yeah.
So that they can follow along with the chord changes. And but it's just turned out to be a huge group.
Yeah, that's great. That's really, really neat. I know Mary Lou was big onto the strolling string stuff, and I don't care if anybody knows that I was the king stroller. I did every one of them. We had all these extra little, go to the Marriott and play a little show, and stuff. But that's a similar idea to this extra because we played a lot of musical songs, from Grease and stuff like that,
Were you in Rosin Dusters?
Sure, yeah, for a little bit in the middle school group, yeah.
Yeah, see, I headed up the Fiddlesticks group.
Cool,
north end of the...
Yeah, that's neat. Yeah, and I know that for myself, I think one of the reasons why I just have a very different perspective on a lot of the other really hardcore classical people, because I've just always been I've loved rock and jazz and funk and all this stuff, and I play in bands now, and that's kind of my main thing. And the Strolling Strings was very similar to that, because I won't mention their name, but I remember Mary Lou talking about, well, this other teacher that we all knew, he's not all about, we've had arguments about the Strolling Strings idea of that, this isn't, this is blasphemy, to teach them this non-classical stuff. You need to be doing the roots and and she just took a different perspective. This is a really, and that's back to the motivating thing. Is part of it a motivating thing for you of the non-classical specifically as being different kind of repertoire? It
is, but mainly it's an educational thing where I want to provide them something totally different than what's in the norm for string players, because there's so many outlets now for them to play.
Yep.
And with strolling, the reason why I didn't go with strolling is because I felt like it doesn't have an improvisational factor to it, and I really like to have. Because it's more like a marching band where you learn your show, you do the same show throughout the year. And so, not to put down marching band, because that's...
Yeah, it's awesome.
I get lost on the field. I go the other way.
You go left, huh?
But getting out to the community and doing all that kind of stuff is so important.
Oh, yeah.
And then one thing with strolling is being able to connect with people and playing to people. Right. That's developing major leadership skills.
Oh, sure.
But I didn't go with that with the high school where I'm at now, because I wanted to give them a little bit more of the music theory and the improvisational factor.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this, I also have a mountain music group, and we meet twice a week during the noon hour, and it is open to anybody in the school that wants to come. We have guitar, hammered dulcimer, mountain dulcimer, banjo, fiddle,
that's fun.
Guitar. If you can play one chord, you're in.
Yeah, wow.
And that in itself is also inviting people in to just have fun, and just, and then my bass player is learning how to read changes and how to do passing tones and everything.
Wow.
Just by looking at, it's a C major chord, I'm going to play C and G, maybe another note to go into this next key. And,
right.
So I just think that's like really super important for people to have all of those different outlets.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So with the idea of doing that kind of music, the one problem I think I'm having is that I'm kind of not taking my schooling in the sense that, like, I know at college, they kind of wanted you to stay in this little area, at least in the music department, not college in general. It's supposed to be kind of opening your mind, but they musically, like my teacher at college, we played classical and that's it. And so I know that when, but also the attention to detail and the excellence and all of that kind of stuff, I definitely had that ingrained in me. So when I go over and I do with my own students, trying to do this jazz stuff, I'm really hesitant to not make them do it perfect, and like have this idea that if we're going to do this Nirvana song, but they're going to be kind of wussy with it, I would argue that, every rocker in history is rolling over in his grave right now, is that even though maybe we realize that, like I said, that we're trying to grab these kids and get them more excited about music, so we're going to find anything because we feel like we're losing them maybe with the classical music, so we add the rock music or the jazz groups or whatever, but I'm annoyed when I see them trying to do this and then they're not doing correct bowings, like you were talking about with the symphony player. And so I'm wondering that, again, maybe this is why I'm too idealistic, is that I'm going like, man, if you want to get the real crap out of jazz, then you've got to do, you have to idealistically do it this way, because you're not really getting what's here. But is that the goal? That's the problem for me.
There's the teacher that wants perfection.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the teacher that
quit talking about me.
There's the teacher that just wants the kids to have fun.
I know.
I try to be a little bit of both.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I want my kids to know is that it doesn't have to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be perfect, and they should be able to have fun while they play.
Mm-hmm.
And I think somewhere along the way we've lost sight on what music is all about. It's about personal enjoyment. It's about making music with other people and being friends with other people. We're supposed to be team players and like do this together, and make this wonderful music. You have to be able to accept your mistakes,
mm-hmm.
and you have to be able to grow on that, but at the same time not dwell on them. It's like,
mm-hmm.
so I missed that F sharp, I was just, giving it some musical license.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's the biggest mistake that we make as educators, especially in Johnson County, because like our kids are so competitive
mm-hmm.
on everything, and we have to be dead solid perfect. And we take them to contests, we're supposed to get straight ones. I took my chamber kids last year and we got like some really nice ratings and some really nice scores, and then there was part of me is like, well, it's not perfect. I didn't get perfect 80s,
mm-hmm. Right.
So I'm not going to get perfect 80s.
Right, yeah.
But I think, we've ingrained ourselves to be absolutely perfect all the time, and we have to let these kids, especially the ones that are high flyers anyway, they've got to be perfect in everything they do. Give them a way to express themselves without being overly, criticizing them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay,
mm-hmm.
It's okay if you didn't quite get that riff, we'll get it
right.
next time.
And that's the problem that probably both of us have realized when you come into improv, is that all these kids are in that mentality of it's good because
they have to do it perfectly.
Well, and I would argue that to me is that because I see a huge difference between like the blues guys, like the blues scene in Kansas City. I know them pretty well now, mm-hmm. and their mentality and the classical people are way different, mm-hmm. just and so I would argue that even yourself, who is definitely in the classical world, I would argue that that's a classical thing. to want that, because as a like principle of the music almost is that classical is built in a world of perfection, but some other people, so like country music for example, is not built in a world of perfection. It's not the point of it. It's a totally different point. That's what I was talking about with the jazz thing, is that you have to understand the point of this. The point, like with jazz for example, your attitude is, I'm too cool for this room right now. You know, that's kind of a thing in jazz where it's not cheesy ever. You know, like, yeah, but classical music, we can go there and it's fine. And one other thing that you said, I completely agree with that, of the maybe let's try to steer away from the perfection. I agree with what you said. Something that I've been, again, pondering myself is that, and the problem is for me is maybe realizing that I'm dealing with kids and not dealing with a symphony, because when I want anything, like for example, when I want to go watch sports, I don't want to watch crappy sports. I want to watch Michael Jordan go up against a Magic Johnson. You know, I want to go listen to a symphony play this awesome. We go to a concert because it's our kids, you know. Who chooses to go to a third grade orchestra concert? Nobody, you know. Right. We go because our kids and we're supporting them, but nobody goes to hear that. What we always want is we want the awesome.
We want perfection.
We want perfection, and so that's where I'm struggling with that of because you're coming at it from a different way of how do we get to this point, and I'm going, well, to get to this level of playing, I'm not wrong. You got to learn all this stuff, but you're going a different route where you're going, if I get them to love this, then they'll come with me. You know, and I'm forcing them to come with me.
If I get them to love this, then they are going to work for.
Yes, and yeah.
For excellence.
You're right. So I know I'm just letting out my own personal stories here, but because I'm part of the show is me trying to learn myself, because there's stuff that you can obviously see I'm frustrated and annoyed. Last big thing I'll ask you is like. And I've been asking every teacher this because it's one that's been absolutely driving me crazy, is that the kids that are in 19 activities, it is absolutely, I'm losing my mind. I cannot handle it. Like the kids that are in soccer and taekwondo and sports and then music. And like this is back to the, again, I know this whole time we've been talking about motivation, but that's the time when I'm sitting here and I'm realizing that a lot of times it's like a psychologist where it takes a teacher or a psychologist 5 seconds to figure out what the problem is. Oh, this guy's angry. It's like, you can, like we were saying, you can diagnose it. Diagnosis is not the issue for me. I know it's not. Right. I can tell in 4 seconds what the problem is.
Me too.
And most of the time, to me, it has nothing to do with music. It has always, like the 5 things, to me, that's time management with the parent. It's not a music thing. Their parent and the student haven't sat down and going, hey, maybe I can't handle 5 freaking activities. Maybe we need to pick 3. Or they just don't have very good discipline.
Johnson County kids have to outdo each other. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times they're in like all of this stuff because the parents want their kids to look good to other parents. Mm-hmm. And it's like, hey, so let's put Johnny in da 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 da.
And then what do they do? The other parents, oh, well, my kid's in da-da-da-da-da, and then they go off on their whole thing.
But the thing is, with all of that, sometimes the kids do it to themselves.
Yeah.
Because they can't, I think this is a society thing, it's hard for kids just to sit and do nothing now. Mm-hmm. They've got to be entertained constantly, and they've got to be busy constantly. Just to sit with a fishing pole and watch the bobber is just really hard for a lot of kids. So, with that in mind, I think that the answer is, if they can't handle it, then get them out of it. Mm. But if they can handle 5 different activities a night, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the answer is.
Because some kids can. Some kids can handle a lot of stuff, and they deal with it.
Or they look like they're handling it, and then later on in life you figure out that they couldn't handle it.
Yeah. I had a kid came into lesson, and he just got done with like track or soccer. Or it was soccer, because that's more running than track is, and track is running. It's like, and he came in, and he just... Ugh, and he wasn't joking. I could tell. I mean, he was absolutely exhausted, and we me and the parent were being idiots to schedule a lesson right after track practice, and that's where I go back to the idea of the taking it home a little bit, of the emotionally take it home, where I'm sitting here and I'm going through my check sheet of okay, I got my concerts and I got my, what am I doing wrong, and so I'm sitting there. But now when I realized that I had this happen with a student where the kid was, the parent said, my son does not have somebody in his life like you, like personality-wise, somebody who's really passionate and artsy, and I was so different from his stepdad. And she's like, I'm so glad. And I was like, it really dawned on me. I'm like, oh, that's what this is for this kid, in the mom's eyes. This isn't about music. This is about a role model. This is about, or having somebody that the kid can actually like open up to, because he doesn't open up to anybody, and that really opened my mind up. But if we're not going to, if we realize that some of these kids aren't going to be in New York Philharmonic, somebody who's 3 years old, some of them don't even get it, I mean, that's the MBA, right? So if we're not doing that, well, why the hell are we sitting here? Why the hell are we doing these lessons? And the only thing I can come up with is all the non-musical things that we've all talked about, not making excuses, your role model, your hard discipline, leadership. But when I start realizing that, and then I start talking about that in lessons, now I feel like I'm life coach. And this is totally changed. Now this isn't music lesson. And when I come to the parents and say, come down and have the come to Jesus meeting of, hey, you know what, he's kind of in a lot of, he's not really practicing. Now I'm like screwing with their life right now. And is that our job? That's, I don't know.
I think as a public school teacher, it is my job to be that role model, to be there for them. I have kids that just come in and talk about, this and that has nothing to do with music. I think that's part of being a music teacher in the high school, public school. And I'm glad that I'm there for them, because some of them don't have anybody.
Yeah.
It takes a village. I don't know.
Yeah, you don't have to have an answer, but that's some stuff that I've been considering that has really been bothering me, and maybe it just annoys me when other teachers, and they're like, oh, I have 40 students and stuff, and then I'm thinking like, how the hell does this guy have 40 students? I'm like, oh, well, he's coming in and he's just nice. Oh, good job, Billy. All right, see you next week. And then I'm sitting here, losing sleep over trying to do it perfect or be the best teacher I can be, and caring probably almost too much. I think that may be one of my problems, is I just think about it, caring too much and trying too much, but I'm like, oh, that's why you have 40 students, is because I'm actually trying to push my kid, and you're not pushing them. Oh, like not you, but this other teacher, I'm like, that's why you have 40 students, is because you're just nice,
Well, I think the role of a public school teacher and a private school teacher or a private lesson teacher is totally different.
Sure.
They're paying you directly to be there, and you really have to be more businesslike. But I understand your dilemma.
Yeah. So, we're probably getting close to wrap it up. Was there anything that you could think of as another like kind of thing that typical young teachers do, that maybe one more big piece of advice that you would give any younger teacher?
Well, you want to expect everything you can out of a kid. It's like, if you expect them to not achieve very much, they're not going to. So it's like, whatever you vision them as is what they're going to be. But don't do it to the point where you don't give them a chance to make a mistake. And be patient. You've got to be patient.
Yeah, that's good. I definitely am trying to learn that. Being patient.
But you
little bastard.
They're kids.
Yeah.
And middle school kids particularly, they're out of their minds. They have no idea what they're doing. So, just be patient. Because they're going to be stupid one minute and smart the next. And
Libby put out a thing that she found on Libby Fearharm, and she put out this thing, and it was just a teacher. It was so the teachers were the kids. It was like a Facebook post, and so the teachers were sitting there, and the kid was the teacher, and so then the kid goes, so our concert is da, 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 and then 1 second later the kid goes up and, wait, when's our concert again? You know, and you're just like, oh my god.
We have a test today?
Yeah. It's like, you're killing me.
We talked about this. But yeah, I mean,
you just gotta be patient, like you said.
You have to have the patience of a saint. Yeah.
So last quick thing. Do you have a funny like concert story or a really funny kid story that was?
Okay, so I had a student, and we had this concert, and it was a 4th grade demonstration concert. So we had just learned how to sit properly and how to do our scale, and so I had this kid that I noticed that he was kind of sitting toward the back of his chair. And so I said, okay, because I like to show the parents how fast they stand up, you know, so I was like, everybody stand up, you know, so and I noticed that he was sitting toward the back of his chair, so I moved his chair a little bit, and when he sat down, he missed his chair, and it was all my fault, and I did that right in front of the audience, and his dad was very large, and I think he was a very important person, and he was not happy with me. That's one. And the other thing that comes, I was teaching at an elementary school, and we had the school board attending. We were in the library, and we were playing and everything, and I was showing this, again, a demonstration concert, and I was showing the audience how we've learned how to use hooked bows. And I looked at that school board, and I said, yeah, these 6th graders are really good hookers. It's like, why did I say that? And the 6th graders are like, oh my gosh! And you know, not one of the school board members said anything to me.
They knew it was a mistake. Yeah. Well, the 7th grader, you know, they're all like cracking up, I'm sure.
Oh my gosh, those 6th graders are like, Miss Mahan, what are you doing that for? So, I mean, I've got stories galore.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Teaching can be really frustrating, but there's some days that it's absolutely awesome, right? I mean, something funny happens, or the kid finally gets it, or like, I mean, how rewarding has it been for you?
Well, KMEA was very rewarding because we were the first strings group to be at KMEA that was not a classically oriented group.
Oh, wow.
This was the first, alternative kind of style that had ever gone to KMEA. And we were in the jazz room.
Yeah, that's right.
And I bought them jazz fronts, so, I mean, they looked like a regular jazz band.
Yeah.
And we had a standing room only, and we had standing ovation at the end. And it was just so cool because that's one of my better moments. Because, we showed that there's something else out there, and a lot of teachers that came was like, wow, this is totally different, so.
Yeah, I think that stuff is awesome. I think that's a really good idea to get them into that. Like I said, I'm frustrated with a lot of the old school classical teachers that are so straight laced that they at least
there's
with genres.
Room for that. Kids have to be classically trained.
Right.
I mean, you have to be able to do that before you can teach them the alternative styles.
Yeah.
So.
I agree with that 100%. It's really hard to teach improv when they don't know where their third finger goes.
Absolutely.
I mean, you've got to do the technique first.
You've got to.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Mm-hmm. But you just need to make sure that there's other avenues out there, and you don't have to just do one. You can. Band people knew that all along. They've been doing this all along. They've done jazz and everything else all along. Pep band, marching band, concert band. Why can't strings do that?
We can, and that's. I think you were saying that is that there isn't really, because I thought about this other day. We recreate. That's what we do in classical. We don't create. We recreate. It's what all Beethoven's crap, and Brahms and all these people, but when you're moving into that, it's actually engaging their right right hemisphere, you know.
No, it's part of our core curriculum now.
Yeah.
The creativity part. And jazz and actually the mountain music also taps into that.
Sure.
Where they can just make something up within a certain perimeter. And it's like, you know, that's creative.
Mm-hmm.
And that falls right into all of our standards now that we have in Kansas and around the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, you know, teachers need to embrace that. I know that I was on the curriculum council for our district, and, you know, we were coming up with all of these things that we needed the teachers to do for the creativity component of it. And it was like, you know, for most teachers, that's just so abstract to have them just make up something. You know, it's just like we teach them this, we teach them how to do a 3-octave scale, and this is how we do it. It's like, well, why don't you just make up a melody in that scale? You know, it's like, well, when do we have time for that?
You make it.
You make time for that. And actually, it accelerates the other stuff if you make time for them to create. It actually helps them practice more, and it actually will accelerate your program more.
Yeah, definitely. And that's kind of what I was getting at a little bit with the kind of blasphemy comment when people want to do it but not do it the right way. That's kind of what I was meaning of. I heard this quote that I have on the website is, you can't teach what you don't know. And that's where I was frustrated with, that some of these teachers are wanting to put the grease and all of these, you know, like musical medleys or, you know, whatever, you know, sometimes they'll do like jazzy songs, but they've never played a swing bowing.
They have no idea.
They have no idea how to do it, and I understand why they're sitting there and they're going like, these kids don't care about Beethoven anymore. I got to do something to hook them, you know, and this is what I can think of to play a Nirvana medley, a video game music medley, you know, to try to get them doing some sort of contemporary songs. But you don't know how to do the you know, you don't know how to do that bowing as the teacher.
And sometimes you can't explain it to them, you just role model it.
Right,
say, hey,
but they can't role model it, you know, like, cause you know, that's, you know.
It starts now teaching the kids now, and then later on they'll be able to continue it. It's hard for a teacher to come out of their comfort zone and try to learn a new style. I've been doing these Irish jam sessions and bluegrass jams. I'm terrible. I'm horrible. You know, and there's all these people, you know, like 80 years old. It's like, how do you do that? And then the Irish music is like, you know, I went to one of the Irish jams and
was it Scott's Jam, McLuhan?
No, that's whiskey just before breakfast. That's not. This is Irish music. And so anyway, I brought some music with me because I'm new at this, and I wanted. And when you get old, you'll learn that you don't memorize as well. And so anyway, you know, I'm just new at it. I'm trying to play some songs, so I had some music with me. And I played a song and everything, and everybody joined in. Hey, yay, success. So I get up to leave, and this man comes up. He goes, man, we don't bring the dots. It's like, so I got reprimanded for bringing the dots to this gig or to this jam session. And so, I mean, it's hard. It's hard to learn a style that you're not used to. And it's taken me a year to learn about 20 tunes.
You're right, yeah.
But I really enjoy the people.
Yeah.
You know, for the most part, except for the guy that reprimanded me. But yeah.
Screw that guy.
Yeah,
but isn't that funny? Because we're reprimanding on the other side. No, you must. You know, that's that's another thing we didn't really talk about is the Suzuki stuff, where, you know, some of these teachers are not. They're like, well, I don't like Suzuki because they don't teach them to read. I'm like, every one of your front row Suzuki kids. Don't start that crap with me. You know, the teacher, you know, high school, I'm like, every one of your kids has been, your front rows started at 4 years old and they're Suzuki kids and they're whooping everybody. You know, don't tell me that Suzuki's crap. You teach them how to read later, way easier than teaching them how to read or teaching them how to play ear later. It's my opinion. I think
everybody needs to be ear trained very early.
Yeah. Right, and you probably had some of that maybe with starting so young. I don't. Did you do Suzuki or was it something else?
No, I started traditional, but I mean I could read music at 3, and then also I had perfect pitch.
Mm-hmm.
So my mom for parties would put me in the other room, and play chords on the piano. And I was 3 years old. I was like, oh, that's a C E G chord.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so it was just kind of an innate thing.
That's cool. Yeah. Well, cool. I mean, we could probably go on all night, but yeah. Well, Cecily. Cecily, I got it wrong again. Cecily Mahan, thanks for coming.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. So Olathe North, and doing a lot of great stuff over there, and thanks for coming and sharing some words of wisdom.
Well, hopefully somebody got something out of it.
Totally. Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure they did. All of us that are younger teachers, there's stuff that we get, but it's always the reason why I want to do this show is because a lot of our people who have taught longer than us always have stuff that they have already learned from, and we need to listen, because so we don't go into the brick wall.
Yeah, just take it easy. Don't get burned out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks. That's
and do something for yourself every once in a while that's not music.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because we can kind of go music, and that's it.
Take a bike ride, go out and fish, do something that's not anything to do with your job.
Yeah, that's it. That's good.
And don't answer your email at home. Leave it at school. It'll wait another day.
I like that a lot. Put the phone down.
Put the phone down. Enjoy life.
Yeah, I like that. That's it. Get out of here. We'll see you guys later.